Few people know that Mel Gibson once doubted whether The Passion of the Christ would ever be completed. The backlash, financial risks, and personal turmoil made him question everything. But something greater than himself pushed him forward. Would he have imagined that years later, his faith would be tested in an even more personal way? And what happens when a man who has portrayed suffering on screen is forced to endure it in real life? The answers lie in an ordinary afternoon in a bustling city where Mel walked alone, his mind clouded with troubles. A failed meeting had left him frustrated, adding to the weight of personal struggles already pressing on him. Lost in thought, he barely noticed the voice calling his name, until the words turned into insults. If you enjoy content that helps you grow spiritually, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and join our community for more inspiration. Let's get started. A man, face twisted with rage, shouted accusations about Mel's faith and the Passion of the Christ. Gibson clenched his jaw, willing himself to ignore it, but the stranger wouldn't stop. His fury exploded in a single violent motion, a fist striking Mel hard across the face. The world spun. The pavement met his body with force. A sharp pain radiated through his jaw as he lay stunned. Around him, people froze, staring but unwilling to act. The attacker disappeared into the crowd, leaving only silence and the cold sting of humiliation. Then, something extraordinary happened. A warmth unlike anything he had ever felt surrounded him. The golden light of the afternoon seemed to shift, intensifying, wrapping around him. Mel lifted his gaze, and his breath caught. A man in radiant white stood before him. Not just any man. His presence was overwhelming, yet peaceful. His eyes filled with an understanding that pierced straight through the depths of Mel's soul. Jesus extended his hand. Mel hesitated, his mind racing to grasp what was happening. But as their hands met, a wave of warmth flooded through him, lifting not just his body, but something deeper, something broken within him. "Mel," Jesus spoke, his voice strong yet gentle. "The pain you feel is not yours alone. But you, my son, can be a light to others." Tears welled in Mel's eyes. His journey was only beginning. The weight of Jesus' words lingered as Mel rose from the ground. The stares from bystanders remained, but he barely registered them. He wiped his face, feeling the imprint of something far deeper than just the attack. His heartbeat steadied, but a new urgency coursed through him. We all face moments where life feels unbearable, where the weight of our struggles seems too heavy to carry alone. In those moments, proper knowledge and direction can make all the difference. This is exactly what The Secret of Jesus' Apparitions offers, a path to clarity and peace through his revelations. This ebook goes into his prophecies and offers insight into what lies ahead. It's available for free in the pinned comment. Grab it now before the edition's gone. He didn't know the man's name, nor did he understand what had driven him to such hatred. But the bitterness Mel had carried for years, the resentment, the sharp-edged pride, had suddenly lost its grip. He had spent so much time defending his faith, but had he ever truly embodied it? That thought followed him as he left the crowded streets behind. The familiar rhythm of the city buzzed around him, yet he felt like he was walking through something unseen. The encounter had stripped away his assumptions, leaving him with nothing but a command that felt impossible. Finding the man was not easy. Days passed in a blur of restless searching, inquiries met with shrugs or dismissive glances. But persistence led him to an overrun shelter on the outskirts, where the forgotten sought refuge from the world. The air inside was heavy with exhaustion. Men and women clutched at bowls of food, their expressions dull, their shoulders hunched from burdens unseen. The flickering fluorescent light overhead cast shadows that made the room feel smaller than it was. And then, there he was. Sitting alone at the farthest table, the man's face was different now. No rage, no defiance, just the hollow stare of someone who had long since accepted defeat. His knuckles rested against the tabletop, scars from old fights marking his skin. He didn't see Mel at first, too lost in thought. Mel's approach was slow, deliberate. He didn't plan what to say. The man finally looked up, eyes widening in recognition before narrowing in confusion. Mel set a tray of food in front of him. No words, no demands, just an offering. The man's jaw clenched. His hands curled into fists, but they didn't lift. For a moment, the air between them was thick with unspoken history. Then something shifted. His fingers uncurled, his shoulders slumped slightly. He picked up the spoon. The first few bites were slow, hesitant. The man barely lifted his eyes, his fingers tight around the spoon, as if expecting this to be some kind of trick. The tension in his shoulders refused to ease, even as the warmth of the meal settled inside him. Mel remained silent, watching without judgment. He felt like he should speak up to break the awkward silence between them, but something inside him told him to wait. The man had lived in the margins for too long. He knew the weight of words that demanded something in return. Halfway through his plate, the man exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "Why are you here?" The words were rough, edged with disbelief. "You think this makes us even?" Mel leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on the table. "I don't believe in keeping score." The man scoffed, stabbing his spoon into what was left of his food. His voice dropped lower, words muttered more to himself than to Mel. "You should have hit me back." Moments like these remind us how guidance can change everything. If you're seeking understanding, don't forget. Your free copy of the ebook is still available in the pinned comment, but only for a short time. Mel studied him for a long moment. There was no bitterness in his expression, no remnants of the humiliation he had felt that day on the street. "You were angry," he said simply. A dry laugh escaped the man. "That's an understatement." His fingers drummed against the edge of the tray before finally loosening. "Name's Samuel." The name settled between them, unremarkable and yet a small shift, an opening. "I'm Mel." Samuel's lips curled into something close to amusement. "Yeah, I know." His fingers traced the rim of his tray, his gaze finally lifting, not in challenge, but in curiosity. So what now? Mel had asked himself the same question. Sitting in a dimly lit shelter with a man who had once struck him wasn't exactly how he had imagined this encounter. He had no grand speech prepared, no rehearsed wisdom to offer. "I don't know," Mel admitted, "but I'm here." For the first time since their meeting, Samuel held his gaze, searching for the hidden condition, the unspoken demand. He found none. He nodded once, just enough to be noticed, then returned to his food. The rain hit the pavement in steady rhythm, the kind that soaked into everything before you even realized it. Mel pulled his coat tighter as he stepped outside the shelter, the echoes of his conversation with Samuel still lingering. The encounter had left him unsettled, not because of any confrontation, but because of how unfinished it all felt. There was no dramatic resolution, no certainty that the man would change, no clear sign that any of this had mattered. But something had shifted. Days passed, and though Mel returned to his routine, his thoughts remained tangled in that moment. The weight of Jesus' words still pressed on him. He had forgiven, but was that enough? Had he done what he was meant to do? The idea crept in slowly, unspoken at first. A story, one he couldn't shake. It wasn't about him, but about something greater, something that had taken root in his heart. Every night, he found himself drawn to his desk, scribbling notes, sketching scenes, structuring something that felt bigger than him. The process was relentless, consuming. Then, the doubts came. He had faced resistance before, but this was different. His last film had already stirred controversy. Would anyone even listen this time? Would the world care? One evening, exhausted and restless, he drifted into uneasy sleep. And there, in the silence of his dreams, the light returned. Jesus stood before him again, not as a distant figure, but close, tangible. The same eyes, the same overwhelming peace. But this time, he wasn't alone. A crowd surrounded him, faces blurred yet undeniably present. Their postures were expectant, waiting, searching. Mel's chest tightened. He knew what this meant before Jesus even spoke. This is only the beginning. The words resonated deep within him, carrying both reassurance and responsibility. The people in the vision weren't just spectators. They were waiting for something Mel had yet to bring into the world. The right words at the right time can shift everything. If you haven't yet, grab your free ebook now, before the last copies run out. You'll find it waiting in the first comment. He woke up with a sharp breath, the message still burning in his mind. The decision was made. The film had to be created. The first draft felt incomplete. The vision was clear in his mind, but something was missing. Mel paced through his study, staring at the pages scattered across his desk. He had written films before, had shaped stories that moved audiences, but this one was different. It wasn't just a project, it was a responsibility. He thought about the people in the dream, their expectant gazes, the silent urgency in their posture. This was more than entertainment. It was a call. Production moved forward, but obstacles surfaced at every turn. Studios hesitated, fearing controversy. Investors backed away, unconvinced that a story rooted in faith could capture a modern audience. Mel faced rejection after rejection, the same skepticism that had surrounded the Passion of the Christ. He met each setback with patience, but the frustration built. Every closed door felt like a test, each obstacle a reminder of how difficult this path would be. There were moments when doubt clawed at him, whispering that maybe this was too much, too ambitious. Then, an unexpected voice reached out. Samuel. They had kept in touch in the months since their first meeting, though their conversations had been infrequent. The man who had once lashed out in anger had changed. He was still rough around the edges, still navigating his own redemption, but there was a fire in him now. Something restless, something searching. When Mel mentioned the film, Samuel listened intently. You're telling the story, right? The one he put in you? Mel hesitated. Samuel leaned forward, eyes steady. Then do it. Doesn't matter how many people say no. The simplicity of the words cut through the noise of doubt. Mel nodded, exhaling the weight he hadn't realized he was holding. The project pressed on, gathering a small but dedicated team willing to take the risk. Filming began under tight conditions, with a budget far smaller than expected. But as the scenes came to life, something undeniable emerged. The script, the performances, the atmosphere, there was a presence in every frame. Despite the struggles, the film took shape. And even before its release, Mel knew it was no longer just his story. Word of the project spread long before the film was finished. Some called it ambitious, others dismissed it as another attempt to stir controversy. But for those who had been part of its creation, there was something different about it, something they struggled to put into words. The premiere was set in a modest venue, nothing grand, nothing overwhelming. Mel had chosen it deliberately. This wasn't meant to be an industry spectacle. It was meant for those who would see beyond the screen. Samuel sat in the back, blending into the crowd. He had refused any formal invitation, insisting he was just there to watch, nothing more. Yet, as the film began, something shifted in his posture. His fingers pressed against his knees, his breath slowed. Some answers come in unexpected ways, just like this moment. If you're looking for more, don't miss the chance to download your free ebook. It's still there, but not for long. The screen came to life with scenes that felt both familiar and foreign. The journey of a man lost, searching. The weight of anger, the burden of resentment. And then, the moment of breaking, the point where surrender met something greater. Samuel's throat tightened. It wasn't just a story, it was his story. As the credits rolled, silence settled over the room. Not the silence of disinterest, but the kind that held weight. The kind that comes when something lingers long after the final frame. Mel stood at the front, watching faces in the dim light. Some wept. Others sat unmoving, caught in thoughts they weren't ready to voice. He felt no rush to speak. Then, one person stood. Then another, and another. No applause, no loud voices, just a shared understanding that something had changed. If this message makes you think, and you feel it connects with you, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Also, if you really want to support our work and help us keep creating valuable content, consider giving us a super thanks. Join this amazing community and don't miss any news. The film took on a life of its own. Screenings spread, audiences grew. It wasn't just faith communities who came, it was skeptics, wanderers, those who carried wounds they had never acknowledged. The message cut across divisions, reaching places Mel had never imagined. In an interview, a reporter asked, "Did you expect this kind of response?" Mel only smiled. "It was never about what I expected." And in the quiet of his mind, he remembered the voice that had told him. This was only the beginning.